If you look at a map of the world and color-code it by religion, you notice something immediately. It doesn't look like a map of universal truth. It looks like a map of cultural borders. If you are born in Arkansas, you have a statistically overwhelming chance of being a Christian. If you are born in Kabul, you will almost certainly be Muslim. If you are born in Varanasi, you will likely be Hindu. This is the first and most obvious clue that we are dealing with a human invention. Universal truths, like the laws of physics or chemistry, don't care about borders. Gravity works the same way in London as it does in Tokyo. The atomic weight of gold doesn't change when you cross a river. But religious truth changes the moment you step across a geopolitical line. The specific God you fear, the rituals you perform, and the afterlife you expect are entirely dependent on who your parents were and where they lived. This geographical clustering suggests that religion is a cultural inheritance, passed down by humans rather than a divine revelation beamed down from the cosmos. When we start peeling back the layers of history, we see that the gods have always looked suspiciously like the people who worship them. In ancient Greece, the gods were passionate, jealous, and politically messy, just like the Greeks. In feudal Japan, the spiritual world was obsessed with honor, hierarchy, and ancestry, just like Japanese society. The Vikings, living in a harsh, frozen world of constant raiding, didn't worship a god of turn-the-other-cheek meekness. They worshipped Thor and Odin, warrior gods who valued bravery in battle above all else. We create gods that fit our needs. We project our own values, our own fears, and our own social structures onto the sky. This is why the Old Testament God seems so obsessed with tribal warfare, livestock, and land ownership. He cared about those things because the people writing his dialogue cared about those things. They were a small tribe trying to survive in a hostile desert. So they wrote a character who was a warlord, a protector, and a strict lawmaker. If a cosmic intelligence actually existed, something that created black holes, DNA, and dark matter, it implies a complexity that is beyond our comprehension. Yet we are told this being is intensely concerned with what we eat on Fridays, who we sleep with, and whether we cover our heads. These are human concerns. They are the concerns of tribal leaders trying to maintain order, not the concerns of a galaxy builder. The fingerprint of humanity is on every page of every holy book, because the authors could only write what they knew. We can actually watch this process happen in real time if we look at the phenomena known as cargo cults. This is one of the most fascinating pieces of evidence for the human manufacturing of religion. During World War II, American troops set up bases on remote islands in the Pacific, specifically in Vanuatu. The indigenous people there had never seen modern technology. Suddenly, these soldiers arrived with cargo, planes, medicine, canned food, jeeps. It was miraculous wealth. When the war ended, the Americans packed up and left. The cargo stopped coming. In response, the islanders didn't just shrug and go back to farming. They built a religion. They built airstrips out of straw and carved headphones out of wood. They mimicked the behavior of the soldiers, marching in formation, hoping to summon the planes back. They created a messianic figure named John Froome, usually depicted as an American serviceman, who they believe will one day return to bring them wealth and salvation. We know for a fact that John Froome isn't a god. We know the mechanics of how that belief system started. It was a misunderstanding of technology combined with a desire for material goods and hope. But to the believers, it is absolute truth. This shows us how easily humans can turn regular events into mythology. If this can happen in the 20th century, documented by cameras and anthropologists, imagine how easily it happened 5,000 years ago when we understood almost nothing about how the world worked. This leads us to the psychological machinery that allows religion to take root in the brain. We have evolved a specific trait that psychologists call the hyperactive agency detection device, or HAD. Think about our ancestors on the savannah. You hear a rustle in the grass. It could be the wind, or it could be a lion. If you assume it's the wind, but it's actually a lion, you die. If you assume it's a lion, but it's actually the wind, you just look a little jumpy, but you survive. Evolution rewarded the paranoid. It rewarded the people who saw agency or intent where there was none. We survived because we assumed that things were happening on purpose. We projected a doer behind every deed. The wind didn't just blow, someone blew it. The rain didn't just fall, someone sent it. The sun didn't just rise, someone pulled it across the sky. We populated the natural world with invisible spirits because our brains are wired to look for patterns and intent. We are uncomfortable with randomness. We need a narrative. Religion is the ultimate narrative to explain the scary, random noises in the grass of our lives. This agency detection combined with our ability to dream created the concept of the soul. Early humans didn't understand REM sleep. When they slept, they saw their dead relatives. They hunted with them, spoke to them. When they woke up, the dead person was still gone. The logical conclusion for a prehistoric mind is that there is a part of us that can detach, travel, and survive death. This duality, the body and the spirit, is a cognitive mistake, a misunderstanding of our own neurology, but it became the foundation of every religion on earth. As human societies grew, our gods had to grow with them. This is a crucial transition that shows the utilitarian nature of religion. When we lived in small bands of hunter-gatherers, roughly 150 people, we didn't have high gods who watched our morality. We had local spirits, fairies, dryads, tricksters. These spirits might play a prank on you, but they didn't care if you committed adultery or stole from your neighbor. In a small group, you didn't need a god to police behavior because everyone knew everyone. If you stole, the tribe punished you. Social pressure was enough, but then we invented agriculture. We settled down. Cities formed. Suddenly, you are living surrounded by strangers. How do you keep order in a city of 10,000 people where you can't watch everyone? You invent a surveillance system. You invent a god who can see through walls. You invent a god who creates a permanent record of your behavior and punishes you not just in this life, but in the next. The evolution of the high god, or the moralizing god, tracks perfectly with the rise of complex political states. Kings and emperors quickly realized that religion was the most efficient way to govern. If the laws are just made by the king, people might revolt. But if the king is appointed by God or is a god himself, rebellion becomes blasphemy. It becomes a cosmic crime. We see this shift in the history of Yahweh, the God of the Bible. Most people assume the monotheistic God was always the single universal creator in the minds of his followers. But archaeology tells a very different story. Early in the history of the Israelites, Yahweh was just one god among many. He was likely a storm warrior god from the southern deserts. He had rivals Baal El, Moloch. In the earliest biblical texts, the existence of other gods isn't denied. They are just framed as inferior. The commandment, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," admits that other gods exist. It's a demand for loyalty, not a statement of monotheism. It's a political treaty. Over centuries, as the political needs of the nation changed, Yahweh was edited. He absorbed the characteristics of the other gods. He took the father figure status of El. He took the storm powers of Baal. He was rewritten from a tribal warrior into a universal creator. This editing process is visible in the texts themselves if you read them without the lens of devotion. We can see the seams where the stories were stitched together. Take the story of Noah's Ark. It's a retelling of the Epic of Gilgamesh, a Sumerian myth written long before the Book of Genesis. In the Sumerian version, the gods flood the world because humans are too noisy and the gods can't sleep. In the biblical version, the story is copied, but the motive is changed to morality: humans are wicked. The writers took an existing pop culture story of the time and rebranded it to fit their theology. This happens over and over again. The concept of hell as a place of fire and torture didn't really exist in the Old Testament. The Jewish concept was Sheol, a gray, dusty place where everyone went, good or bad. The fiery hell we know today was largely imported later, influenced by Greek ideas of Tartarus and Zoroastrianism from Persia. If these ideas were divine truths, they would have been there from the start. Instead, we see the theology evolving, borrowing, and changing based on who conquered whom. Look at the Council of Nicaea in the year 325. This was a gathering of bishops called by the Roman Emperor Constantine. They voted on the nature of Jesus. Was he the same substance as God, or a similar substance? They voted on which books made it into the Bible and which were thrown out. We have the Gnostic Gospels, books about Jesus that were rejected because they didn't fit the narrative the church wanted to push. The Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, these are anthologies curated by men. They contain contradictions that betray their human authors. In one chapter, God is love. In the next, he orders the genocide of the Amalekites, including the killing of infants. These aren't the mysterious ways of a higher power. They are the shifting moods of human authors writing in different centuries with different agendas. Even the morality that believers claim comes from religion is clearly biologically and socially evolved. We are told that without the 10 Commandments, we would all be murdering and stealing. But we know that humans were living in functional societies for thousands of years before those commandments were written down. We know that bonobos and chimpanzees, our closest relatives, display empathy, fairness, and altruism. A chimp will console a friend who lost a fight. A rat will free a trapped companion even if it means sharing food. This is not because they read a holy book. It is because cooperation is a survival strategy. We evolved to be social animals. If we ran around killing each other constantly, our species would have died out. Morality is a biological imperative, not a celestial command. We don't need a god to tell us that hurting people is bad. We feel it in our mirror neurons when we see someone else suffer. Religion hijacked this natural empathy and claimed credit for it. Throughout history, the territory of the gods has been shrinking. This is often called the God of the Gaps. Thousands of years ago, God was the explanation for everything. Why does the sun rise? God. Why is there thunder? God is angry. Why did that person get sick? Evil spirits. But then, science began to fill in the gaps. We learned that the sun rises because of planetary rotation. We learned that thunder is the sound of rapidly expanding air caused by lightning. We learned that sickness is caused by bacteria and viruses. Every time we found a real answer, God was pushed out of that territory. He retreated from the weather, then from medicine, then from astronomy. Now the gaps are very small. Believers usually retreat to the very beginning of the universe. What caused the Big Bang? Or the origin of consciousness? But just because we don't have a complete answer yet, that doesn't mean the answer is magic. In 1400, we didn't know what caused the plague. If you said, it's tiny invisible creatures, people would have laughed. But it was tiny invisible creatures. We just hadn't built the microscope yet. Assuming that the currently unexplained requires a supernatural explanation is a logic error that humans keep making. We also have to look at the specific way the human brain generates religious experiences. Neuroscientists have been able to replicate the feeling of a presence or a spiritual union in the lab. By stimulating the temporal lobes of the brain with magnetic fields using a device sometimes called the God helmet, researchers can induce a feeling that there is someone else in the room, or a feeling of cosmic oneness. We know that people with temporal lobe epilepsy often report intense religious visions and hyperreligiosity. This suggests that the feeling of talking to God is a specific firing pattern in the brain. It's a neurological state, not a communication line. When a mystic starves themselves in a cave and sees an angel, they are inducing a state of hallucination through deprivation. The biology produces the experience. Furthermore, consider the sheer inefficiency of religion as a method of communication. If a God existed and wanted us to know him, why rely on ancient texts written in dead languages that require translation and interpretation? Why deliver the message to one guy in the desert and rely on a game of telephone to get the word out to the rest of the planet? It is a system designed to fail. It creates confusion, schisms, and violence. A perfect being would communicate perfectly. The fact that there are thousands of different denominations of Christianity alone proves that the message is not clear. The confusion is the feature, not the bug, because the confusion comes from the fact that we are trying to interpret vague, human-written mythology as if it were fact. We also see the human fingerprint in the concept of the afterlife. The versions of heaven we are sold are always suspiciously tailored to what the people of that time and place lacked. For desert nomads, paradise is a lush garden with running water. For Vikings, it's a warm hall with endless roast meat and mead. For the oppressed, it's a place of justice where the last shall be first. Heaven is simply a wish-fulfillment fantasy, a projection of what we are missing here on earth. The fear of death is the primary engine of religious belief. We are the only species that knows we are going to die. That is a terrifying burden. It creates a level of existential anxiety that requires a salve. The idea that this isn't the end is the most comforting lie we have ever told ourselves. It allows us to cope with the loss of loved ones and our own mortality. But wanting something to be true doesn't make it true. The comfort religion provides is real, but it is the comfort of a placebo. If you have a headache and you take a sugar pill thinking it's aspirin, your headache might go away. The relief is real, but the medicine was fake. Religion is the placebo of the masses. It can make people feel better. It can build community. It can inspire great art, But none of that makes its claims factually true. When we step back and look at the full picture, the conclusion is unavoidable. We have a phenomenon, religion, that varies wildly by geography, changes over time to fit political needs, looks exactly like the cultures that practice it, and resides in the gaps of our scientific understanding. It mimics the structure of our families and our monarchies. It relies on our specific cognitive biases and fears. We don't need to posit a supernatural creator to explain religion. We have a complete, naturalistic explanation for it. We know how myths form. We know how cults start. We know how the brain seeks patterns. We know how societies use ideology to control populations. All the pieces are there. Accepting that religion is man-made doesn't strip life of meaning. In fact, many find that it adds weight to our existence. If this is the only life we have, then this moment is infinitely precious. If there is no afterlife where everything is fixed, then we are responsible for fixing things here and now. We can't wait for a divine parent to clean up our mess. We are the architects of our own meaning. We created the gods, we painted the chapels, we wrote the hymns, we did that. It was a testament to human creativity, human fear, and human hope. But it is time to recognize the creation for what it is. We are not the children of a fallen world trying to get back to a garden. We are a rising species, emerging from the superstition of our childhood, learning to stand on our own feet and look at the universe with open eyes, unafraid of the silence. We don't need the sky to speak to us. We have each other. And for a species that started as scared primates huddled in a cave, that should be enough. To understand how the ancient religions began, we don't need a time machine. We just need to look at the last 200 years. We often treat the major world religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, as if they are in a separate category from cults or modern spiritual movements. We give them a gravity and a respectability that we don't grant to the new guys. But the only difference between a religion and a cult is time and real estate. Consider Mormonism. We have a complete historical record of its founding. We know who Joseph Smith was. We have court records from his life. We know about the gold plates that no one else was allowed to see. We know about the translation method involving a seer stone in a hat. To an outsider, the story sounds undeniably human, a classic case of a charismatic leader inventing a narrative to build a following. Yet, within a few generations, it grew from a fringe sect into a massive, powerful global faith with millions of dedicated, intelligent followers. If this can happen in the 19th century, in a time of printing presses and literacy, it destroys the argument that people wouldn't die for a lie or that it must be true because it grew so fast. We see right in front of us that humans crave community and certainty so deeply that they will buy into a narrative, even when the evidence against it is substantial. Go even more modern, look at Scientology. We have the writings of L. Ron Hubbard before he started the religion. We know he was a science fiction writer. We know he reportedly said that the best way to get rich is to start a religion. And yet, highly educated people, celebrities, and professionals dedicate their lives to it. They disconnect from their families. They spend fortunes they truly believe. This tells us something uncomfortable about the human brain. We are not skeptical by nature. We are believers by nature. We are gullible when the promise is big enough. When the promise is eternal life, or secret knowledge, or salvation from pain, our critical thinking centers shut down. If you were to take the story of the burning bush or the resurrection and present it today as a brand new claim by a guy on a street corner, we would call it mental illness or a scam. The only reason we nod along to the ancient stories is that we have been inoculated with them since childhood. We are used to them. The antiquity of the lie gives it the weight of truth. But a lie told for 2,000 years is still a lie. We also have to look at the fragmentation of truth. If religion were a divine signal, it should be converging, not diverging. In science, we converge. Biologists in China and biologists in France might start with different theories, but eventually, they agree on the structure of DNA because the evidence leads to one answer. Religion is the opposite. It constantly fractures. Christianity started as one thing, then split into East and West, then the Protestants split from the Catholics. And then the Protestants split into thousands of tiny pieces: Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, Pentecostals, Seventh-day Adventists. Each one claims to have the true interpretation. Each one thinks the others are slightly wrong or doomed to hell. This fracturing is exactly what we expect from human literature. We see the same thing in fandoms. People argue over the canon of Star Wars or Lord of the Rings. They split into factions. They write fan fiction. Religion is the fan fiction of our ancestors, spiraling out of control, creating endless spin-offs because there is no original, verifiable source to check against. There is no God to step in and say, actually, you guys misunderstood that verse. There is only silence, so the arguments continue forever. One of the most popular arguments for a creator is the complexity of life. Look at the eye, they say. Look at the complexity of a cell. It's like a watch. There must be a watchmaker. This is the argument from design. It feels intuitive. But when you actually study biology, you don't find a perfect watch. You find a series of messy, chaotic, barely functioning hacks that barely keep us alive. You find evidence of a blind, unguided process evolution, not a master engineer. Let's look at the recurrent laryngeal nerve. In mammals, this nerve connects the brain to the larynx, the voice box. In a direct design, it would go straight from the brain to the throat, a distance of a few inches. But that's not what happens. The nerve goes from the brain, down the neck, into the chest, loops underneath the aorta of the heart, and then travels all the way back up the neck to the larynx. In a human, this is a detour of about a foot. In a giraffe, the nerve travels 15 feet down the neck and 15 feet back up. That is 30 feet of unnecessary wiring. It creates a delay in signal. It makes the nerve vulnerable to injury. No engineer in the universe would design it that way. So why is it there? Because evolution can't start from scratch. In our fish ancestors, that path was a straight line. As we evolved necks and our hearts moved down into our chests, the nerve got hooked around the artery and had to lengthen and lengthen and lengthen. It is a historical scar, not a design choice. It proves we are modified fish, not divine clay. Look at the human spine. It's a disaster. We took a bridge structure, the spine of a four-legged animal, and tipped it upright to act like a column. That's why almost everyone has back pain as they age. It's bad engineering. Look at the human birth canal. It passes through the pelvis. Because our brains got big and we started walking upright, the pelvis got narrower while the baby's head got bigger. For most of human history, childbirth was the leading cause of death for women. An intelligent designer who cared about mothers would not build a system where the very act of giving life is a death sentence. Then there is the argument from divine hiddenness. If God is a loving father who wants a relationship with us, his silence is abusive. Imagine a human father who locks his children in a house, never speaks to them, never shows his face, but leaves an old, contradictory instruction manual on the table. If the children misinterpret the manual, he burns them in the basement forever. We would call that father a monster. We would call child services. Yet this is exactly the relationship described by theism. We are told to look for God in the miracles, but the miracles are always statistically insignificant. God seems to heal back pain or invisible cancers, but he never heals an amputee. He never regrows a lost limb. Why? Because ambiguous illnesses can go into remission naturally. Legs don't grow back naturally. God's power stops exactly where human biology stops. During the Holocaust, during the Rwandan genocide, during the Black Death, prayers were offered up by the millions. They were screamed by innocent people. The result was exactly what you would expect if there was no one listening. Nothing. Events unfolded according to the laws of physics and human cruelty. The sky did not open. The ground did not swallow the murderers. The universe remained indifferent. To look at that history and say, God has a plan, is a moral insult to the victims. It is a way of sanitizing horror to protect a belief system. If religion is logically flawed and biologically unsupported, why is it so sticky? Why does it persist? The answer lies in evolutionary psychology and a concept called costly signaling. In early human societies, trust was the most valuable currency. If I'm going to hunt with you, share my food with you, and sleep near you, I need to know you aren't going to stab me in the back. I need to know you are committed to the tribe. Words are cheap. Anyone can say, I'm loyal. To really trust you, I need you to do something expensive. Religious rituals are expensive. Fasting is expensive, you lose calories. Sacrificing a goat is expensive, you lose food. Circumcision is expensive, it's painful and risky. Spending your Sunday morning in church is expensive, you lose time. These costs are the point. By participating in these difficult, painful, or boring rituals, you are signaling to the tribe, I am one of you. I'm so committed to this group that I am willing to hurt myself or give up resources to be part of it. This is why religious groups are so tight-knit. They have all paid the dues. It creates a powerful in-group bonding. But the dark side of this is the out-group hostility. For the tribe to feel special, there must be an enemy. There must be the infidel, the heathen, the heretic. Religion creates a sharp line between us and them. This is why religious conflicts are so vicious. You aren't just fighting for land or resources. You are fighting for your identity and your cosmic validity. We see this tribalism in the way religions police clothing. The hijab, the turban, the kippah, the cross, these are team jerseys. They are instant visual signals that say, I am on this team. The psychological comfort of religion also comes from the just world hypothesis. Human brain hates the idea that the world is unfair. We hate the idea that a child can get cancer for no reason, or that a dictator can live a life of luxury and die peacefully in his sleep. It feels wrong. So we invented a balancing mechanism. We invented karma. We invented hell. We invented a system where, eventually, everyone gets what they deserve. It allows us to sleep at night. It allows us to tolerate injustice in the world because we think, well, God will sort it out later. This is actually a dangerous mindset. If you believe that justice is guaranteed in the afterlife, you might work less hard for justice in this life. If you believe the poor are suffering because of karma or God's will, you might be less inclined to help them. Religion can act as a narcotic that numbs us to the urgency of suffering. It tells us that everything is under control when clearly, looking at the state of the world, it is not. Finally, let's dismantle the claim that we need religion for morality. The apologists love to say, if there is no God, everything is permitted. They argue that without a holy book we would be raping and murdering without consequence. This is a terrifying confession. If the only thing stopping you from murdering your neighbor is that you are afraid of God, then you are not a good person. You are just a bad person on a leash. True morality comes from empathy and reason. It comes from understanding that other people are conscious beings like yourself, and you don't want to cause them pain because you know what pain feels like. This is secular humanism. In fact, our morality is superior to the morality of the holy books. We have evolved past them. Read the Bible or the Quran objectively. They condone slavery. They treat women as property. They prescribe death penalties for victimless crimes like heresy or homosexuality. We, as a modern secular society, have decided that slavery is wrong. We have decided that women are equal. We have decided that gay people deserve love and rights. We didn't get these ideas from the scripture. We got them in spite of the scripture. We had to drag the religions kicking and screaming into the modern era. Every civil rights advancement was opposed by religious traditionalists who quoted their holy books to stop progress. A moral zeitgeist. The spirit of the times moves forward. Religion tries to anchor it in the Iron Age. We are becoming more moral, less violent, and more inclusive, and we are doing it as we become more secular. The statistics bear this out. The most secular countries on earth, places like Sweden, Denmark, Japan, are also the safest, most peaceful, and most charitable. The most religious countries are often the most violent and unstable. The correlation that religion equals goodness simply does not exist in the data. We are currently living through a massive shift. The rise of the knowns people with no religious affiliation is the fastest growing demographic in the developed world. The internet has done to religion what the printing press did to the absolute monarchy. It has democratized information. It has allowed a kid in a strict religious household to go online and read about evolution, or chat with an atheist in another country. It has broken the monopoly on truth. The curtain has been pulled back. We see the wizard working the levers. We see the human machinery behind the divine spectacle. Letting go of the myth is not a loss. It is a graduation. It is the moment humanity moves out of its parents' house. It is scary, yes. The universe is vast, cold, and indifferent. But it is also majestic. When you look at the stars, you don't need to imagine a deity looking back at you to feel awe. The reality is awe-inspiring enough. You are looking at nuclear furnaces burning billions of miles away. You are looking at the light from the past. You are made of the same atoms as those stars. You are the universe experiencing itself. We don't need the Bronze Age fairy tales anymore. We have poetry, we have science, we have connection, we have love, and we have the truth. And the truth is, we are alone here, and that means we have to take care of each other. Because no one else is coming to save us. If you want to control a population, physical threats only work while you are in the room. If a king wants to stop you from stealing, he needs a guard on every corner. That is expensive and inefficient. But if the king can convince you that an invisible guard is watching you 24/7, and that the punishment isn't just prison, but eternal fire after you die, he doesn't need to pay for guards anymore. You will police yourself. This is why the concept of hell was invented. It is the most effective psychological weapon ever deployed. It transforms the human imagination into a torture chamber. But when we trace the history of this idea, we see it being built brick by human theologians, not revealed by a god. In the earliest layers of the Bible, the afterlife is vague. It's called Sheol. It wasn't a place of punishment. It was just a shadowy underworld where everyone went: kings, slaves, prophets, sinners. It was boring, not painful. It was similar to the Greek concept of Hades. The idea of a fiery place of torment for the wicked was developed much later, heavily influenced by Zoroastrianism and Greek mythology, specifically the pits of Tartarus. The Church Fathers in the Middle Ages took these vague threats and turned them into a science of terror. They mapped out the circles of hell. They invented specific punishments for specific sins. They used art-terrifying paintings of demons tearing flesh to traumatize illiterate peasants into submission. This wasn't divine justice, it was behavioral conditioning. It was terror management. Think about the morality of hell for a second. It is a concept so disproportionate that it collapses under its own weight. Punishment, to be just, must fit the crime. If you steal a loaf of bread, you go to jail for a week. If you murder, you go to jail for life. But hell is infinite punishment for finite crimes. If you live to be 100 years old and you sin every single day, you have still only committed a finite amount of evil. To punish that finite amount with billions and trillions of years of torture is not the act of a loving God, or even a just judge. It is the act of a sadist. It creates a God who is infinitely less moral than the average human. Most of us wouldn't torture our worst enemy for a month, let alone eternity. Yet we are asked to worship a being who set up this system. This fear is the glue that holds religion together when the logic falls apart. It is why people stay in faiths they no longer believe in. It's called Pascal's wager, the idea that you should believe just in case to avoid hell. But that's not faith. That's insurance fraud. It's pretending to love a dictator because you are afraid of his basement. The fact that this threat is necessary proves that the religion cannot stand on its own merits. If the product was good, you wouldn't need to threaten the customer with fire to get them to buy it. There is a reason why almost every religion on earth insists on teaching children while they are young. The Jesuits famously said, "Give me the child for the first 7 years, and I will give you the man." They understood neuroplasticity long before we had fMR, eye machines. A child's brain is a sponge. It is evolved to absorb the culture of its tribe without question. A 5-year-old believes in Santa Claus, the Tooth Fairy, and God with the exact same level of conviction. They trust their parents implicitly because survival depends on it. If a parent says, "Don't eat those berries, they are poison," the child listens. If a parent says, "Don't touch that idol, it will curse you," the child listens. Religion hacks this survival mechanism. It installs a software program in the brain before the firewall of critical thinking has been built. If you took a group of intelligent 40-year-old adults who had never heard of Christianity and you read them the Bible talking snakes, virgin births, walking on water, rising from the dead, they would laugh. They would regard it as a collection of fairy tales like Hans Christian Andersen. The only reason it is respected is that it was embedded before we could defend ourselves against it. We are creating a cycle where we pass our own confusion and fears down to our children, labeling it tradition. This is evident when we look at how specific religious beliefs are. A Christian child is terrified of hell, a Muslim child is terrified of Jahannam. A Hindu child is worried about being reborn as a lower caste. These children are not born with these fears. They are taught them. We are burdening them with the baggage of our ancestors. Consider the psychological toll this takes. We tell children that they are born broken or sinful. We tell them that their natural thoughts, skepticism, sexuality, curiosity, are often evil or temptations from a demon. We teach them to distrust their own minds. We teach them that faith, believing without evidence, is a virtue, and that doubt, asking for evidence, is a moral failing. This is the exact opposite of how we teach them to navigate the rest of the world. In science class, we teach them to ask why. In history, we teach them to check sources. But in Sunday school, we teach them to shut up and believe. We partition their brains. We create a cognitive dissonance that they have to carry for the rest of their lives. Breaking this cycle is one of the most ethical things we can do. Allowing a child to explore the world with an open mind, free from the threat of cosmic punishment, is a gift of freedom. When the holy books were written, the world was small. It was flat, or it was a bubble. The stars were just lights on a dome, put there to help us navigate or to look pretty. The sun revolved around the earth. Humans were the center of the story. In that context, a personal God who obsessed over human behavior made sense. The stage was small, so the actors were important. But now we know the scale of reality, and the religious narrative has completely lost its sense of proportion. We live on a tiny average rock orbiting a tiny average star in the suburbs of a generic galaxy containing hundreds of billions of stars. And our galaxy is just one of 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. The numbers are so big they are meaningless to our monkey brains. If you shrunk the history of the universe down to a single calendar year with the Big Bang on January 1st, human beings wouldn't show up until 11:59 p.m. on December 31st. All of recorded history, every king, every war, every religion, every Bible written happened in the last few seconds of the last minute of the last day. Religion asks us to believe that the creator of this insanity, a universe 93 billion light years across, waited 13.8 billion years in silence, and then suddenly decided to intervene by appearing to a few shepherds in the Middle East to give them instructions on how to cut the foreskins off their penises and how to sacrifice goats. It is absurd. It is the height of arrogance. It is anthropocentrism, the belief that we are the main character. The universe clearly indicates that we are not the main character. We are a byproduct. We are chemical scum on the surface of a cooling planet. That doesn't mean we aren't special to each other, or that our lives don't have value. But it means that the universe was not built for us. If God created the universe just for humans, he is incredibly wasteful. Why create 2 trillion galaxies if you only need one planet? Why create a universe that is 99.999% lethal radiation and vacuum if the goal was a garden for Adam and Eve? The fine-tuning argument, the idea that the universe is perfectly tuned for life, is survivorship bias. We look at the puddle of water and the puddle says, "Wow, this hole fits me perfectly. It must have been designed for me." No, the water fits the hole. We adapted to the universe. The universe was not adapted to us. If the constants of nature were different, we wouldn't be here to complain about it. There might be something else, or there might be nothing. But the fact that we are here isn't a miracle. It's a statistical inevitability given enough time and space. Science offers a far more majestic view than religion. Religion gives us a sky daddy who performs parlor tricks. Science gives us the Big Bang, quantum mechanics, black holes, and the evolution of consciousness. The truth is infinitely more interesting than the fiction. We don't need to make up stories about gods throwing lightning bolts when we understand electromagnetism. The reality is magical enough on its own without the need for a wizard behind the curtain. So where does this leave us? If the sky is empty, if the books were written by men, if the rituals are just social glue, and if the afterlife is a lie, is that a tragedy? Many believers think that atheism is a philosophy of subtraction. They think we are taking away the magic, taking away the hope, taking away the purpose. But they have it backward. Atheism is a philosophy of addition. When you stop spending your energy trying to please a silent deity, you get that energy back. When you stop waiting for the next life, you start valuing this one. When you realize that no one is coming to save us, you realize that we have to save ourselves, and we can. Look at what humans have achieved without divine help. We eradicated smallpox. We figured out how to fly. We landed on the moon. We created the internet. We doubled our life expectancy. We composed the Ninth Symphony. We wrote Hamlet. We did all of that. We are the miracle. Attributing our achievements to God is an insult to human hard work. When a surgeon saves a life after a 10-hour operation and the family thanks God, they are ignoring the years of study, the steady hand, and the focus of the human being in the room. We need to start taking credit for our victories and taking responsibility for our failures. We are the authors of our own morality. We decide what is right and wrong based on reason and compassion. We don't need a threat of fire to be good. We are good because we are social animals capable of love. The meaning of life is not a riddle to be solved. It is a project to be built. Meaning is something we create, not something we find. You find meaning in your work, in your family, in your art, in the pursuit of truth, in the alleviation of suffering. We are the universe waking up. We are the way the cosmos knows itself. For a brief flicker of time, the atoms that make up your body have come together to form a conscious mind that can look up at the stars and wonder. That is a privilege. That is a stroke of luck so improbable that it is worth more than any heaven. We don't need the illusions anymore. We are ready to grow up. We are ready to stand on this pale blue dot, holding hands with each other, and face the reality of our existence with courage and curiosity. Religion was our first attempt at understanding. It was our childhood drawing of the world. It was clumsy and fearful and creative, but we have better tools now. We have the telescope, we have the microscope, we have history. We have psychology, we have each other. The gods are dead. Long live humanity.